I'm Angela Kelly Robeck, host of the Empowered Principal Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today I'm talking with Craig Gehring. He is the founder of MasteryPrep. MasteryPrep partners with over 2,000 schools and school districts to help over 400,000 students improve their ACT and SAT scores, and it's at no cost to the students or families. What an awesome focus. Great conversation. You're going to love this. Thanks for listening. Oh, by the way, before you go, it'd be so cool if you took a second to help out the podcast. Could you do that for me? Here are 3 ways that you could do that. 1, tell a friend and share links. 2, you could go to my website and leave a review and subscribe. And 3, how about clicking on the link on my website homepage where it says, buy me a coffee. And by doing this, you could donate $1 or $2, to help me address the costs associated with producing the podcast. That would be so cool. You are awesome. Enjoy the show.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Milletto. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. With Dr. Steve Milletto.
Craig Gehring is the founder and CEO of MasteryPrep. After he earned perfect scores on the ACT and SAT, Craig started tutoring to help students earn scholarships. He found that most students need more support than what traditional test prep programs provide. That was the genesis of MasteryPrep. Each year, MasteryPrep partners with over 2,000 schools and school districts to help more than 400,000 students improve their ACT and SAT scores at no cost to the students or their families. MasteryPrep is licensed by ACT Incorporated to use official test questions in its material and is proud to serve as the Council for Opportunity in Education's preferred provider of ACT and SAT preparation. Craig lives in Baton Rouge, Louisiana with his wife and 3 teenage daughters. Craig, thanks so much for being on the show, and say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me. Really appreciate the chance to chat with you on the podcast.
Well, great to have you here, and I have to start with, perfect scores on the SAT and ACT. That is so awesome because you're talking to someone who not even close. Could you talk a little about how that happened? Was there something that you did to prepare? Was there a magic dance you did? What can we talk a little bit about that?
It was the magic dance for sure.
Nice.
I didn't do a lot of prep per se, but there were some things in my environment, and this is something that comes up in conversations with school districts that I'll have, that if they want to create an environment where there are more students scoring perfect scores and higher scores. One is I was involved in a lot of competitive academic programs, like a competitive math program like Mu Alpha Theta. And so you have these, I did the Gemini competition. And so you have this environment where other students and peers and teachers are working to refine your skills. I was in Science Olympiad. I also was in a program where we did a lot of logic classes, right? Which helps a lot with test taking skills. It's interesting. Usually logic classes are limited to gifted programs, right? So the students who struggle the most with tests often don't have access to a logic course or logic work, but I did a lot of that, and that helped. And I also was just an avid reader, and I was in an environment in schools that really elevated reading, and that can help a lot too. It's hard to get a high score on the ACT or the SAT without a strong reading level. And the schools, I was very fortunate to be part of schools and environments that really elevated that and valued that.
That's awesome, because I definitely can totally understand the impact that it would have on you as former high school principal, and you're trying to make sure that the environment is conducive to growing kids' opportunities to do well on state tests and standardized tests and such, that it is very important. So that's cool that's what paid off for you. That's very nice. All right, so let's talk about you tutoring other students. What challenges did you discover where the students were creating the problems for themselves? They were their own problems. They were the barriers in their own way, that type of thing.
I think the biggest one was that They would lie.
Oh, nice.
Right. So like, because you say, hey, all right, we just did this question and they get it right. Or, and we work through it and we get to the end and we say, do you get it? And they're like, yes, because they just want to move on, right? This is
Yes.
uncomfortable, right? And we want to rush past that moment and never and short circuit mastery, right? And so, um, I found I had to spend some time table setting and creating a safe space and creating an expectation. And also just I stopped asking, did you get it after a while? I'm just like, let's do another one. Let's see. Let's see whether you got it or not, right? Instead of doing that because, in general, um, I find that it's easy for a student to overestimate. Like they think they've got it, but really they need another 15, 20 minutes of practice on the skill before it really locks in. And that's sort of our like with mastery prep and everything that we're doing, that's been the that's really the key, kind of the difference to my approach versus a traditional test prep approach is even in the name, like Princeton review, like the idea with Princeton review is, and with traditional test prep is students aren't doing well on a test because they've forgotten and so they need a review. And what I found in tutoring is that students are doing well on the test because not because they forgot it, but because they never really mastered the skill to begin with. And so we need to slow down, we need to breathe, we need to take a minute and just really, we don't have to get everything right on this test to win, right? You can get a college ready score in some of these standardized tests getting half the questions right. So we don't have to do everything. We don't have to review everything. We just slow down, take things one at a time, nail down, master one thing at a time, and we can win.
That's awesome. That's and I do have to say, yes, I having worked with high school kids and I have to admit, even myself, even though it's ancient history, I'm pretty sure I would have told you the same sort of thing. Okay, we're good. Let's move on. Yes, we got it. We're good. Yeah.
That's right. We're good. Stop talking about this, please. Can we please move on?
Sorry, that's very telling. All right. So, in your bio, I read this. He found that most students need more support than what traditional test prep programs provide. What is it that you discovered there?
So I think there's a few things. Like if you look at it from, I'll tackle it both ways, like from the content side and from the test taking side. From the test taking side, what I found was like if you pick up one of these test prep books from Barnes and Noble, because that's what you do, right? As a parent, you're like, I have a moral obligation to prepare my child. I will buy this doorstop of a book. I will put it on the coffee table.
Yes.
Something good will happen. And if you read these books, they say things like use common sense, use the process of elimination, use these things, right? But it doesn't really go into how you do that, really, or like model what that actually looks like, right? And what it actually feels like to go through that. Because really you use a test taking strategy when you don't know how to answer the question. So in that moment of panic is when you have to like get in there and do something about it and apply that test taking skill. So that was one thing, is that I found that I had to really break it down and go in slow motion and have conversations with students about, all right, what are you thinking about this? And how can we kind of tackle this in different ways? And so it's a much more deliberate approach. Same with time management. Typical test prep, the concept is, here's your time limits, do that, right? And really, it's more like band, where you need to practice. We were talking before the podcast about a marching band, but like, you need to practice over and over and over again before you hit your time and you have that intrinsic clock if you're not a strong test taker, if it doesn't come naturally for you. And so have to be very deliberate. And then same on the content side is it's very easy to overshoot the mark and say, and not start at the fundamental level that the student is ready to learn at. And then you kind of short circuit all the learning, right? And so, if, we're working with the student on the Pythagorean theorem and applying that to word problems, but really, the student is still a little shaky on square roots and exponents, which is the component of that, right? And they just sort of give you blank stares, and you could talk all day and work with them till you're red in the face about Pythagorean theorem, and it's just not going to get you to where you need to be, right? So starting at the right point and being deliberate and not assuming. I think that maybe it's that unspoken thing at Mastery Prep is like, don't assume. You know what happens when you assume.
Nice, nice. Yes, very, very good. It isn't interesting when you think about just. I want to go back to something that you said earlier about something that you probably missed out on more than you need to review, that you didn't get enough information there, or maybe, you did okay. I'll bump you up to the C, or something.
That's
And,
right.
and so you think you're the master of the universe now, it's like, yeah, I got this. And not so much. Right.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, good stuff. Well, maybe not so much good stuff there, but that's it. I see it happening. So that totally
Well,
understand that.
it's a real challenge too for, and it's not just the ACT and the SAT. There are other end of course assessments, even though they're nominally called end of course, sometimes take an aspect of a summative, like a multi-year summative, right? So, but it's a particular problem with the ACT and SAT where um, you have a English 2 teacher who has a student who's a junior, I mean, English 3 teacher, and they're a junior, and they're about to go into the test. And really, they're getting tested on all this grammar stuff that they learned in middle school. And the teacher doesn't have the lesson plans for that. They're not like, I'm going to put you through a grammar boot camp. Or they try to, but it's a big burden on the teacher. And but even then, the intuitive thing is, okay, the kid forgot the grammar. But really, like in actual practice, what happens is if you drill in with the grammar, they never really learn that grammar to the level that these tests are asking them to do. But it is a big challenge that um, the students are taking a test that stretches back many, many years, and it's challenging for the teachers to get them ready for that.
Totally understand. All right. So let's shift gears here and let's talk about Mastery Prep. So what's its purpose and who's it for?
So Mastery Prep is a program that partners with school districts, right? And we work with and we provide school districts and teachers all the resources that they need and the training and the software to then prepare their students for these high stakes assessments. And so the model is, so we don't have a consumer program. There's no way to get tutoring directly from Mastery Prep as a parent. I'm sorry, just like full disclosure there. But through the school district, we allow them to then provide these programs equitably to all of their students, including many students whose parents would not be able to afford consumer test preparation in any shape or form. And those schools often will embed it into what they're doing during the school day. So that might be in a homeroom, that might be the English teacher picking out certain lessons and content, or having the students work on at different intervals in time. Occasionally, it just might be the student goes home with their software license and works on it. But the whole idea is, the problem that we're really focused on is that schools have a lot of students who don't have a lot of access to preparation, who are scoring below college readiness levels, and we're really focused on getting them up to college readiness. Our program is not for, like, if a kid has a 30 on the ACT and they're trying to get a 34 or 36 on the ACT, our program is really not for them. Like, that's not the problem that we're trying to solve. They have a lot of options. But if you have a kid who has a 15 or 16 on the ACT and they're trying to get to a 20 or 21, that's really our sweet spot. That's the bulk of what the school districts are trying to accomplish, and what we're trying to help them solve.
That's awesome, because that's, and especially, that difference right there, because you're focusing on students that are trying, they're kind of almost there, and
Yeah.
how to get them to that next level of understanding and such. I have to say this, before we start recording, one of the things that I mentioned to you is that my performance on the SAT did not compare to my performance on the ACT. Is there a difference that you discover, between the tests that does lend itself better to some students than others?
Yes, and we usually, if the student has the ability to take both tests, we advise they take both, because some students are going to do better on one test, some are going to do better on the other. Throughout their entire history, they've been differentiated as assessments. They're kind of getting at the same thing, and there is a concordance there. But there are big things, like, for example, on the SAT, it's half math. The score is half math, whereas on the ACT currently it's only a quarter math. It's about to be 1/3 math with the enhancements that are coming out. So there's a different weight to that, but there's also just a ton of things around like what's the length of the passages and what are the kind of questions. For a long time, SAT penalized you for guessing and the ACT did not. Now neither penalizes for guessing, but yeah, there were a lot of structural changes that then can result in a student having a better showing on one test or the other.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. So, and by the way, I just had to say this. I can attest to it from ancient history that it definitely, I was like, ooh, okay, I did better. So we're good. So, all right. Let's talk about ed tech for a second. Can you talk a little bit about what role ed tech might play in standardized testing, especially as we're talking about, the impact that students are seeing and, how it might impact students, I guess is really where I'm going with that.
Yeah, I think one is, one thing that we've clearly seen since the pandemic really is that assessment is almost universally now online on computer, and I think that COVID sort of forced the final kind of action on that, right? So all of our practice testing, for example, is online, and EdTech allows you to do things that you can't with pencil and paper, right? Like, with pencil and paper, we could look at what a student was saying, like what they chose, and make some generalizations about their test taking skills and habits. But with EdTech, with the software, you can actually basically be looking over the student's shoulder. You can see what they select and unselect. Like there are some students who do this thing where they pick the right answer and then they second guess themselves, and then they always like second guess to another choice. You can't see that they did that really on paper and pencil unless you have like an army of people looking at eraser marks, right? But it's very simple to see that in software because you get all those interactions. You also have this scalability, right? It's more affordable for school districts to scale out programming. Like the idea that I can take an engaging instructor and put them in a online context, and then all of a sudden that experience can reach thousands and thousands of students is just incredible, and something that even 10 years ago, even though the technology was really there 10 years ago, the infrastructure wasn't necessarily there 10 years ago in the school buildings to reliably do that. And so I think it opens up a lot of possibilities. I do think that there's still a challenge. I think a lot of teachers are still gun shy about doing synchronous computer-driven activities, right? Because all it takes is one kid saying, my computer doesn't work, and then you're just derailed, right? So
Right.
like I think there's still hesitancy around that and some limitations, but overall, I think it's a real opportunity. The way we approach it is we're not we're not pushing a solution. We're not saying you need to use technology. We're listening to school districts, and so what I find is that districts want a blend of print and services and software, and some districts are like very software-y, and some districts are very light, want to be very light on the software, and they're more interested in the print and the service. And we try to meet the district where they are and give them a solution that works for them.
Excellent. Love it. Let's stay focused on test prep for a little bit more. And can test prep impact state accountability metrics? I mean, what do you think there?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think, we see it, like for example, we, early on in MasteryPrep's history, I think we were running for about 4 years. And at the time, we started in Louisiana, and we had a school district who worked with us from the beginning, and they had and they did professional development with us, and we were working with them through implementing a program at scale. So they had a really well built. It wasn't just our program. It was like they had a commitment to a college going culture on their campuses, and getting the teachers really involved. And that district posted 3 years of consecutive ACT score gains district wide.
Wow.
The third year, they were the #1 district for score improvement, not only overall, but also among their economically disadvantaged
Wow.
population, right? They became an A-rated school district, right? And they lifted up, and that was part of it because ACT was part of the accountability there. And that, that has a lifting effect, right? Like that goes into the average, that goes into the ACT scores. We were recently looking at the data in Kentucky this past year. The highest gaining score district was working with MasteryPrep and doing a systemic approach. Same in North Carolina, similar thing. In Louisiana this past year, biggest ACT index gain was a MasteryPrep district. And so, and again, part of it is, yes, we'll take credit and be like, yes, that MasteryPrep's a part of the balanced breakfast, right? But it also just goes to show that if a school district's focus, regardless of what they're using, if they're focused on equity, if they're focused on a college going culture and career readiness, and they're focused on these things, they can have an impact on those accountability ratings, and then it's sort of a win-win situation there.
Gotcha. The, one of the things you mentioned just in passing just a minute ago, I kind of want to delve into now, which is, are there changes coming to the SAT or ACT?
Yeah, so SAT just changed a good bit. They went fully digital and went to an adaptive test for the first time in its history. So that was the big change there. And then, and part of that was moving away from the long format passages. So now passages are short and tied to a single question. ACT is currently undergoing a transformation that they're calling, it's the enhanced ACT. And basically, the passages are getting shorter. There are less questions, less testing time, more time per question. Subjectively, students are going to feel like this is a subjectively better and more approachable experience. And one of the big changes is science is going optional and is not going to be included as part of the ACT composite score anymore. So it's some big changes. I think they're staying true to their roots and like what makes the ACT work. But they've done some listening to they've listened a ton to educators and students and are making a lot of improvements to continue to just continue to get better and be a better experience for the kids testing.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. It's, over the years, there's been these different transitions, and this sounds like a pretty major shift in the world, especially some of it, if it's in regards to the digital or using technology to take the test. So, which is just interesting from the days of worried about everybody with the pieces of paper and whether they turned in the piece of paper at the end, and you had to account for everything. So that's I appreciate you sharing that. All right,
Certainly.
so let's look at some of the services and products that MasteryPrep offers. Now, I got to tell you, I went in, I was having fun on your website, and I found a couple of, it all was neat, but there's some cool products that you do that I thought were really awesome. Could you share a little bit about bell ringers and boot camps? Because these are right up my alley, man.
Yes, so those are some of my favorites. So glad you called those out. So our bell ringers are sets of themed practice questions and activities that provide reinforcement for key college readiness skills. And it's very lightweight, very easy for a teacher to get into it. And they just pull it up on the smartboard, or they pull it up on the student's computer, and they can use it as a bell ringer to start in the first few minutes of class time that are usually wasted, that you're like, what's going on? And everyone's going to get their pencil out and everything. They set that expectation that that's what the student starts the class with, is they're going to work on that practice question under the time limit. And it just gradually builds the student skill. A lot of school districts will use it in earlier grades, right? Because like going back to the concept that a lot of make or break for college readiness on the ACT and SAT are really a lot of middle school level skills, middle school level standards applied to a higher rigor, right? So why wait till 11th grade to reinforce these skills? So the school districts will use the bell ringers in 9th and 10th grade and introduce students to those grammar concepts, to those key reading concepts to the math skill. There's a lot of pre-algebra that students need to be familiar with, and that it can make a big difference. Like then by the time they get to 11th grade and they're taking the test, and they're getting ready for the test, there's a stronger base to work from. The boot camps. So the bell ringer concept is start early, right? The boot camp concept is finish strong, is just before the test, like right before, like a week before, a day before, a couple weeks before, we're going to have a mastery prep instructor comes into the school and delivers a live, or we'll do this virtually too, but it's often a live workshop for all the students on here are the key test taking strategies, here's what you need to do with time management. And the way it works is the students actually, it's not just someone telling them what to do, is they put the strategies into practice right there in the room. We simulate the test and they see that they can perform better and they can do better. So they come out more confident, they come out with like very specific strategies, and they come out with score gains. It's we have these very high energy instructors, because when you start thinking like, okay, so you have this 6-hour workshop, one day, all about the ACT or the SAT. Like, are the kids losing their minds? Are they bored? And it's a long day. Like we want them to build up their endurance, but they're engaged, they're excited because they're seeing progress, and they have a high energy, very engaged instructor that's helped them through everything. So we just finished what we call our boot camp season. We deliver a couple thousand boot camps every boot camp season across the country, and it's a fun service. And you can imagine it's a fun time at the company while we're coordinating all this just before the big testing season.
Oh, I can imagine. Yes. Thanks for talking about that. I thought those were really cool, and especially I could see how helpful they would be in their own rights. So good stuff. All right. So Mastery Prep also offers some 1-hour workshops, and one of these is called Why College. And I'd like you to talk about this workshop, but I also want to think about, I think students get some interesting mixed messages, especially parents too, right now. And part of those mixed messages is almost like, yeah, no one needs college anymore. We'll throw that away. And I wonder if it's still a lot like it always has been, which is that good for some. For some, maybe we need to do other paths right now, or always. I mean, it's nothing wrong with the other paths either. And it's just, but it's like, we're just going to say no more or something like this. And I thought this was really cool, especially in conjunction with some other workshops that you have. So could you talk about Why College?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of our college playbook series. Part of what we found in working with school districts on improving ACT and SAT scores is something that would come up all the time is, but at my camp, we're in a rural area, and we have a lot of students who don't value college or don't want to go to college, or who are getting messages from parents like you're talking about that, maybe this isn't a thing. So why should they care about the ACT or the SAT, right? There's this hidden first question on these standardized tests, and that question is, do you give a flip? Right. And if the answer is no, it's going to have a massive impact on your score. Right.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, how do we help school districts create a college going culture? How do we help create that? And again, college is not right for every single student. But, for me personally, I don't like the idea of a student going all the way through a K-12 education system and coming out the other side with doors automatically closed for them, with things that they can't do as they enter adulthood, right? And so, you want to have an option, you want to help them explore. And so in the college playbook and that series of workshops is oriented around helping first generation students whose parents haven't gone to college or access it, helping low income students who might be under resourced, navigate, understand the college value proposition, understand what goes into getting to college, understand why these scores are important. And so in the Why College workshop, it's sort of a table setting workshop where we explore in a live and very engaging format, different scenarios of like, what are the different outcomes and options that a person has with a college degree, without a college degree, right? Like, what is it if you're like, I want to go work in construction? It's like, okay, what are your options in construction with a college degree? What are your options without? What does that pay like? What what does that house look like? What does that car look like? What is that, going beyond, I mean, like, it's an easy statistic to throw out that a college graduate earns $1 million more over the course of their lifetime than a student who just has a high school diploma, right? But it's another thing to actually bring that to life for the students and have them kind of think about that and talk through that. So we also try to show them like there's a lot of cool things that you can do in college. There are a lot of cool classes and really interesting experiences that you can have. And so there are other workshops that we have that get more into the brass tacks of how do you do this and what's going on. But this is more of an exploration workshop that helps students just really think about it. Like, hey, maybe this does actually fit in with what I'm trying to do or with the options I want to have after high school.
That's awesome because I know that it's I have known some parents who, since their child was born, they outfitted them in their favorite college's diapers, but and I think that's a little unrealistic too, because as a child develops their thoughts and ideas, they need guidance more than you will go
That's
this
right.
path, But I think it's so important that parents do have that talk with their child, because it is there's there for a while there's this whole thing about you don't need to take the SAT or the ACT, and some colleges were doing away with it. Well, I noticed that that's kind of turned the other corner, and there are ideas that they should take those tests, even if that university doesn't require it, because it shows another level of thinking and capability and so forth and so on. But
I think that the whole college versus career ready debate sometimes misses the point, because if you go to one of these tests like the ACT or SAT and you look at what you have to be able to answer correctly to get a college ready score, not a hyper competitive score, not a perfect score, but what you have to do to get a college ready score. These are all skills that we want every student to have. There's a base reading level and level of writing competence and math that even if they're like, I'm never going to do a day of college, I'm going to go work I'm going to go be an entrepreneur, I'm going to go work in the trades, I'm going to do these things. Like we still want our students to be able to have this academic base, and it's achievable. The students can achieve that, and I think that's part of the value of the college and career readiness movement is getting, I've observed over the last 20 years, there's more and more of a focus at the high school level of not just graduating the student, but what are they going to do after this? Are they equipped? And I think overall that's healthy, and I've been happy to see the progress and be part of that.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for talking with me today, Craig. We're about to finish up, and where can our listeners find additional information, connect, and learn more?
You can go to our handy dandy website, masteryprep.com. And that's probably, we have all the, the Twitters and the Instagrams and things like that. But probably a good starting point is masteryprep.com. And we have a pretty active blog. So if you're an educator, trying to learn more about kind of what's this approach, how can you help your students with preparing for these tests, the blog has a ton of great free resources and discussions around what what you can do to help your kids.
Very cool. And I'll put that information in the show notes so they can find you and reach out. And good stuff. I got one last question for you, and it goes like this. If you had the chance to talk with an audience of parents and their students who are thinking about going to college, what is a takeaway that you would want them thinking about as they left your talk?
I think the biggest thing is that it is almost impossible to overestimate the impact and the ROI that you get as a student spending time preparing for these tests, right? Like the difference in your experience in admissions, in scholarship opportunities, right? Like it's, like one way that I try to break it down for students is, the difference between a 22 and a 24 on the ACT, like 2 points might be $25,000 in scholarships, right? Like for those 2 points, wow. Right? So it's like if you spend 100 hours, right, doing this, you're still getting paid. You're getting paid $250 an hour for the time that you spent to get those 2 extra points. There is not a summer job that you can get that's going to pay you $250 an hour. Probably after you get your degree and everything, good luck getting that, right? So it's
right.
it's this hugely high ROI activity. And it's people think about it like a test and and this moment, and it is what it is, but it's hard to overdo it in terms of, you can burn out on it, you can prep the wrong way and things like that. But I think that people in the industry, like totally in the know, like that's one of their core insights, is that this is just even in this test optional world, it's still an intensely high leverage activity to take these tests seriously, to do what you can to prepare for them. You're going to come out of high school with this number branded on your forehead, whether you know it or not. All those admissions counselors are going to be looking at that number, and you want to go in with as positive a foot forward as possible.
That's awesome. Great message there. Craig, thank you so much for talking with us about test prep, taking the ACT and SAT and MasteryPrep. Great information, excellent focus. Wishing you the best in all that you do. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Steve.
Hey, you have been listening to Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your voice is right here. The opinions expressed on Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.